So while I was in Paris and walking through Sacré-Cœur, I had a conversation with Jesus Christ. He is the third largest mosaic in the world at the altar of Sacré-Cœur, the Basilica of Sacré-Cœur. And I had to retrace my steps and walk into the little boutique shop, because churches have shops, and buy a little book called Prayer During the Time of Sorrow. I actually cannot find this little book now, it's somewhere, but the conversation, as I recall it, and as I've been talking about it since, was about how each system has its own language. That's where it started. And in the system of Catholicism, if you were to pray to Mother Mary, you would be praying for an intervention. If you were praying for something directly to God or to Jesus Christ or to Mother Mary or to any of the saints, you would be issuing a petition. You would be petitioning them for something, for help. And if you were going to them with a problem that you had, with something that needed to be resolved because it was causing you pain, then you would officially be lamenting. Now, I didn't understand why he was talking to me about this difference in the language. But in the Catholic Church, to lament means something very specific. And he wanted me to talk about this, so I am talking about this. And here in Venus retrograde is the most appropriate time to talk about it as we slow down within ourselves and slough off all of the layers of ourselves that need to be cleared away so that we can live a more liberated, brighter, more joyful life. The word lament itself is Latin and French in origin, and it means to weep. It is anguished weeping. So in the Christian tradition, when you are lamenting, you are in fact taking yourself on a journey of healing, a deep and abiding anguish. We know that here in the duality on earth, we are perfectly capable of continuing our daily lives with joyfulness, with delight in the world, while carrying this burden of anguish within us. And in the Christian tradition, lamenting referred specifically to an anguished state of mind and an anguished state of being. In the modern world, we have been known to grieve or to lament and complain and wail and weep and hold the whole drama about all sorts of things that don't quite qualify as deep and abiding. But we also know that in the greater context of our world, we have reason to lament the state of the nation, the state of the world. In the Christian world itself, Jesus Christ was talking about how Catholicism generally is in a state of grieving and in a state, as a system, of anguished pain over something like pedophilia in the church. That priests have ignored the rights of children and abused children who are in their care, children who are there as objects of empathy and compassion. And they have abused their rank and power and status in the church to do so. And this, for him, creates a deep and abiding anguish that religion and the rank and power that it affords any one human being should be used against another, which in fact is against God. And so he defines for me that this deep, anguished pain that he carries is about anything that goes against God. And therefore the journey, the process, the engaging with lamenting is to turn your pain towards yourself and towards God. To actually engage in an inner process that is faith-based, that is inward, that has the depth of your own vulnerability, and that finally, in its outcome, arrives at a place where you realize that this void within you, which is the space of pain, can only be filled by God. That the depth of it, the dimensions of it, that the needs of it can only be filled by God. This journey of lamenting is a journey in which we set aside asking why. We don't say, why has this happened to me? And I need you to resolve it for me. There is no petitioning in it. And he describes for me that the journey would begin by placing yourself first and foremost in the presence of God, which is what we do here all the time. We invoke the presence of Spirit, or God, or angels, or guides, or elementals. We invoke the support of the universe. So there is an invocation. And from that invocation, we move into the work, into an energy transmission in the process of a meditation, which engages with visualization and sensing and feeling and imagining. And the journey or the process of lamenting is very similar, where you would move from invoking the presence of God and acknowledging that presence to consciously bearing your soul and feeling, exploring your vulnerabilities without blaming your wound on others, without taking responsibility for your wound as if you have created it in some way, so without blaming yourself for it. The process of lamenting is a process of acceptance, forgiving, but most importantly, it is a faith-based process of not engaging in the toxic reactions which will congest your heart, manifest as stress, bring forth the toxins of anger and vindictiveness and all of the lack capacity that we in our ego games manifest. And of course, because it is the process of lament, it invokes tears. Now, Lou very often tells me that all I do around here is cry. And the truth is that the Spirit moves me and tears leak out of my body. In the process of lament, as you move deeper and deeper into the process of bearing your soul to yourself and in the presence of the universe to God, however you perceive that, you are moved, you are shifted, you are uplifted, and you are guided. I felt that. Into a space of peace. It is an active process, very much as Anise described, the work you would do for renewal and rebirth as Venus goes retrograde. It is an active process of engaging with God in all of its forms and frequencies to create peace out of pain. Now, I quite like the sound of this. I quite like this inward journey process that involves no one else. It is a process of creating and maintaining intimacy with yourself, your highest self, and whether you believe in God or not, Source, with the energy that you are. And for me, it feels very much like a soul-based and spiritual process. So I tried it, and I have to be perfectly honest, I didn't have that much to lament at this point in my life. So I turned to, what is it that I am passionate about? Because what I am passionate about is where I am learning compassion. And the process of lamenting brings us into a space where we can experience compassion for others. It brings us into a space where the context of our individual pain is uplifted to an awareness. And I am saying uplifted purposefully. It is uplifted into an awareness of collective pain. This is not a process of saying, oh, you can count your blessings and therefore your pain is less valid or less worthy of attention than all the other pain in the universe. This is a process of uplifting your awareness of pain so that you see how it connects in the universal context to a mass consciousness. And in doing so, you may use this journey to lament the deep and anguished, abiding despair that is in the universe already. One of the things that immediately came to mind for me was the 87 million people who are displaced on the planet right now, who qualify as refugees, who are in fact homeless. And I know that number because Susan said it at least 20 times while we traveled on this world water healing, and she said it at least 5 times at Sacre-Cœur, because it was a point of her own prayer that no one should be without a home. That even if they are not in the country of their birth, they should become at home wherever they are. And it struck a chord for me because in the center, we create a home away from home. In this center, I am so aware that while I am in my physical body, I am away from home. That on the earth plane, I am displaced and I am away from home. And I am journeying my way back home. I am a refugee from the spiritual world. Okay, not quite that dramatic and not quite that bad. But I miss home. And of course, we have created belonging. And that everyone should have that sense of belonging. Everybody should have that sense of connectedness and the offer of security, the offer of safety, the possibility of that. And churches, temples, shawls were those spaces of sanctuary. In the good old days, when even religion sought to be of service and maintained its integrity with humanity. Those days are long gone, and even Jesus Christ is acknowledging that as part of his own deep and anguished despair around the state of humanity. That places and spaces of God are no longer sanctuaries. They are no longer safe spaces. The old days where you could enter a church and no harm would come to you there are long gone. In fact, now it's almost guaranteed that you enter a church and somebody will make you less. Let's not get upset. Thank you. The old promise that in his crucifixion nobody would suffer at the hands of the church ever again has been betrayed over and over and over and over again, and so he is lamenting this. Of course, the fact that he never made that promise and the church did is neither here nor there, because it was a promise given to humanity and the church has failed to live it. I'm just going to look this way to check if Lou's enjoying today's discussion. He's grinning. So, I've got Jesus Christ to the left of me and Lou to the right of me. I am well supported with this. And even Oliver over there is grinning. This despair that is in the universe around people being homeless, people being driven out of their homes by war, by greed, by consumption, which is an actual disease as well as an attitude. This despair is what I chose to lament, to go into a process, a faith-based process, and present it to the Lord Husband and say, Lord Husband, I need to heal this within myself. And even as I did that, I felt a kind of peace steal over me, because first I had to acknowledge that the problem was so much bigger than me. It was so much bigger than my intention. It was so much bigger than my mind. Like everything else in creation, the problem is bigger than I am. And no amount of despair that I bring to the problem was going to resolve it. And I understood in that moment that this is why I was lamenting. It's because the problem is bigger than me. It's because it is deeper than me. It's because it has abided in the universe longer than I have, that I needed to go to a space that was even bigger than my problem, that was more abiding than my problem, greater than my grief, and far more embracing and encompassing than any physical playing sanctuary. And I understood that anything built by man can purport to be a sanctuary only for as long as the people who hold that space are in themselves feeling safe. This space, called the center, will feel very unsafe for you if I feel unsafe in it, because I will then create an unsafety in it. And what that said to me was that the church, the workers in the church, the priests in the church, and in shuls and in temples, they are not living the faith-based life. They are not feeling abundant and safe in God's grace. They are living the ego trip of being in rank and status within a church, and have completely forgot that they are in service to humanity in the name of God. And this is part of the despair, and this is one of the reasons why people are being displaced in the first place. We're still not getting angry. Thank you. The process of lamenting is to ensure that we don't get angry about something, but that we address it in a space where we are assured of support. In other words, a space that is bigger than the problem. If there is anything going on in your own life that carries its own deep anguish, its own deep pain, then lamenting is the process you would use. We can lament what's going on in our schools, what's going on in our government, what's going on in our farms. We can lament all of those things, because all of those things go against the divine order as it has been declared and maintained through aeons of time by spiritual law. We know that spiritual law sets up and maintains a divine balance, and anything and everything that goes against that may be lamented. You cannot, let me be very clear, you cannot lament the loss of a diamond earring. This is an ego trip. It is not something you would place before God. Not because it is too small an issue in the universal context, but because it isn't a spiritual issue. Be very clear about the difference. If you have lost the roof over your head, yes, I understand. This is a physical space. It is a space of honoring your physical body and maintaining it. By all means, let us lament the loss of the roof over your head. We are not going to lament the loss of your diamond earring or the loss of a husband because he had an affair with somebody else, or you had an affair with somebody else, or death. We are not going to lament creation of despair or these collision courses that you've created for yourself and go, well, I did that and then that happened, so now I am in despair. We are not going to lament the fact that you got caught doing something wrong or you did something wrong and it backfired on you. That you take responsibility for and you clean up your act. To lament is a faith-based process. It is a process or a journey inward in which you are becoming more and more vulnerable. You do not get to be a diva in this game. You do not get to dramatize your pain. Every person on the planet is very well aware that every one of them has experienced pain, and when we play the ego game with our pain, we make our pain more, bigger, greater than everybody else's. And I've heard all of those stories where, somebody was burgled here and then somebody else has to pipe up with how they had a bigger burglary and it was a worse burglary. We always have to make our despair bigger in some way, as if it's a competition and the person who's got the biggest pain wins. This is not what lamenting is for. Lamenting is for going within yourself and honoring your pain in the presence of Source, in the faith that Source is big enough, bold enough, bright enough to embrace it and dissipate it, to heal it within you and to heal it outside of you. It is a process of acceptance of pain. It is the process of forgiving the person who has hurt you or betrayed you, including yourself. It is the process of allowing all of the negative feelings associated with that pain, all of the toxic wounding that you've experienced over the years, all the holding on that you've done to dissipate. It is the process of allowing yourself to be uplifted and inspired into recognizing that your pain connects you with everyone, that your capacity for healing connects you with everyone, that you are in fact at one with God and in that presence all the time. And that is why it is a faith-based process. It is not unlike the process of healing at a cellular level, except in this instance, you are consciously, actively working with God to heal, in the acknowledgement that God and only God can heal this wound. I don't like absolutes, but there is so much that we do not know. And Allah Jane has long been a policy of this center. Allah Jane, God knows. So this process of lamenting for me meant that if I am holding an anguish, and I don't know why, I don't even need to know why. Really, the why is immaterial to the healing. I don't have to understand it to forgive it. I don't have to understand it to accept it. I don't have to understand it to heal it. I don't even have to understand it to present it to God, because God knows. We are accustomed to saying God only knows. Well, it's true. God only knows about a great many things. Whether it's coming from my past lives and my future lives and all of my other lives or not, God only knows. If it is a pain that I am deserving of, that I have created for myself from those other lifetimes, and I am here to outgrow, God only knows. If I have created it in this lifetime inadvertently and unknowingly and out of my own ignorance, God only knows. If the pain itself is a burden I have intended long before I was born, and it is an experience that the universe has provided because I am ready to meet it, God only knows. And if there is anything else in that experience that is affecting my continuity in the universe, God only knows. And it is because God knows that I can feel completely safe to get naked, to strip myself of all pretenses, to be completely and utterly vulnerable with the universe, declare all of my insecurities and all of my fears and all of my anxieties, and know that I will shift into peace with myself. So while I was doing this work and working specifically on displaced people, people who are homeless, people who have not yet found their belonging or have been stripped of their belonging, I was sitting there quietly. And I got sad. But I moved on very quickly from that being sad, because I was also feeling okay. I didn't know why I was sad, but I felt sad. And I had to move on, and I moved into a session. And Vashni, whom some of you have met, was sitting here, and we were doing some work, and we were chatting. And she said, "Oh, I didn't know you had a daughter." And I got more sad. Do I have to do my weeping now? Thank you. So those of you who don't know, I have a daughter who is 29 years old, and I have not seen her in 6 years. And my heart is broken open because I miss her so. I have survived Paddy dying, and I have learned to walk alone. And I have worked through the grief and learned now to walk with somebody else, and made a commitment to a whole new partnership relationship. And I miss her. And so I am weeping and wailing and lamenting this loss. I want my daughter back. And on physical plane, I don't know how. But God knows. And once again, I am required to declare my vulnerabilities to everyone, so that it is an active demonstration for all of you. That if God knows And he does, and she does. Then my deep and abiding anguish that is connected directly to my daughter's existence somewhere far away from me, that has left me homeless in our soul connection with each other, will be healed, and it will be answered. Here in the sanctuary of my center and in the sanctuary of this network, I can be naked about this. And find peace in it. Strangely enough, I didn't think that I wasn't peaceful about it. I didn't think that I was in grief about it. Like most people, I thought I had plumbed the depths of it and lived it well. That I had done all of my forgiving, and I had done all of my detaching, and I had done all of my healing. But this is the nature of a deep, abiding anguish. That sometimes all we've learned to do is hold it well. To fit it into a sanctuary within ourselves so that it is safe while we step into the world unsafe or unknowing. So at Bethlehem, long before I went to Sacré-Cœur, Jesus Christ was teaching me how to be unburdened by love. And now, in the process of lamenting, it is about healing whatever is left. Healing any dark spots, any fog within me. But it takes courage, and it takes the desire to actually turn a light onto it and bring it to the fore and place it before God. God sees it and God knows it before you place it in front of him or her. But it is your willingness to actively place it there in the first place and to allow your heart to break over it. That is the handing over. In my case, you may consider it done. For those of you who are aware, several sacred sites of the world have something called a wailing wall or a wailing well, where people gather to wail, to weep, to lament their loss. In the modern world, we are not so accustomed to sharing our grief and being unself-conscious in it. And it is that very idea of being self-conscious, of even feeling humiliated by our grief and our pains, that enforces the hiding. We have been taught that we are good people if we pay attention to the pain in the world, and we talk about taking care of the animals and taking care of the people, all of the collective consciousness issues, the political issues. But if you hone in on your own pain, then preferably you should do that in private, in secret, away from the presence of others. Lamenting gives you a way to do that. It gives you a way to sit quietly in the presence of an entire universe, unwitnessed by any human ego, except maybe for me doing it in front of everybody, and to weep and to wail, to declare and state your anguish, and in doing so, to live, because the outcome is to live peacefully. Now, as you've heard, I've said that I want something. I want that connection. I want that knowing. And that's a petition. So even in my lamenting, I'm saying, I want something. And for me, it's I want that in the knowing that it is healed. I want some kind of outcome for myself as a way of evaluating that something is healed. On the human plane, we know that we want to see that something is healed. And even as I'm saying that, I can tell you that I'm feeling peaceful again. And I'm feeling like it's taken care of. And I'm feeling like Jesus Christ put me on the spot with this one so that he can say, so it is said and so it is done. My mother's son has it all in hand. That I don't have to wait for a specific outcome to feel peaceful, to live in that knowing as I have always done. If you have more than one issue, if you have more than one situation, more than one wound, feel free to lament individually, to get focused, to have a clear intention. It is okay to take time off and go into retreat mode to lament something. It is okay to step out of the traffic of life and focus your energy on feeling the presence of God to lament something. Make that time available for yourself. Such an intense connection, such an intimate connection, deserves the investment of time and energy that you may fully experience yourself in a process of moving from woundedness to healing, from anguish and despair all the way through to peace. And it is promised. It is promised in every good book. It is promised even in spirituality, that when you present it to God, it will be accepted. The universe will meet you where you are, as you are. Let us meditate.